Next speaker, Dr. Catherine Rudman, is a pediatrician with Cape Cod Healthcare, practicing at the Seaside Pediatrics in Yarmouth. And Dr. Rudman is also the school physician for the Barnstable Public Schools. She attended the University of Michigan Medical School, completed her residency in pediatrics in Seattle Children's Hospital, University of Washington. Dr. Rudman has been affiliated with Cape Cod Healthcare since 1999 and is certified by the American Board of Pediatrics. Today, Dr. Rudman will discuss how to build a healthy relationship with food and body image in the age of social media. Without further ado, Dr. Rudman, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Siddhartha. And thank you for having me today. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Dr. Spillane for an excellent talk on a very timely topic with all the fantastic visuals so all of us know what that stuff looks like. An interesting anecdote I just heard from one of the school nurses this week was how quickly they are going through bags and bags and bags of cough drops in the schools. 3 years ago, she's like, I was throwing bags out because they were expiring, they were getting gross, and now she's buying cough drops all the time. So to your point about the coughing, and it just snuck up on us like crazy over the past couple of years, so thank you. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. As a pediatrician, I spend the majority of my days in the office talking about healthy lifestyle habits, healthy eating, exercising, and I'm also now talking a lot about social media and the other things that teenagers are dealing with these days, trying to be healthy, but then there's also a lot of anxiety and there's body image issues. And near and dear to my heart as well, because I have 2 teenage daughters, so I'm right in the thick of things with all of you guys. And it's great to see parents here and school nurses and educators, and this is a good conversation for all of us to have. So I think I could probably talk about for 2 hours on all the amazing things about being socially connected. You know, when I was young, you couldn't organize a whole group to do something really cool in the push of a button. You couldn't scroll through your feed on great cat videos, you know, while you're waiting in line for coffee. Get an in-home tutorial for the best way to do your brows, and check your feed for the March Madness tournament. Go Michigan. So there are so many wonderful things about being constantly connected. This is how we interact with the world around us now. But being constantly connected, what is that like for our kids? They don't even know. They've grown up with this. They have no idea how it used to be. So a few facts, and I think these numbers are actually higher now, but these are the studies that are out there. So 81% of teens, 12 to 17, use social media sites on a regular basis. 55% of girls and 34% of teen boys say social media makes me feel more self-conscious about my appearance. 58% of teen girls, you know, feel bad about themselves when they're looking at all these amazing pictures of other people. Only 19% of teen boys have the same reaction. 30% of all teens say social media means they always need to be camera ready. So, you know, we're always telling kids, be the best version of yourself. And what is social media telling them? Look the best version of yourself. So this is what they're growing up with. This is what they're hit in the face with every day. So we've all heard the song, but first let me take a selfie. How did I look in my photos? How many likes did I get? All these obsessions that go on in the minds of our teenagers. Lots of time taken up deciding which image to upload, photoshopping it. You know, there's airbrushing, there's filters. There's ways to totally change the photo. And then they're regularly checking for likes and rechecking, and every minute. You know, how can any teenager get their homework done when they have their phone next to them? So there's this consumption by a need to fit in on social media. Social media becomes more important than real life. I've heard some kids say, what if I don't even look like my photo when I go on this date? So all kinds of worries. And what is this really? It's fake self-promotion, right? And everybody's doing it. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and the list goes on. There's new ones all the time. So is it self-esteem or selfie-esteem? This preoccupation with social media and the compulsions that follow may actually contribute to body dissatisfaction. And there's much research now looking at this and our society's focus on thinness, whether it be models, actors, other celebrities, whether it may be athletes trying to get a certain amount of fitness in. And with that often comes the obsession on weight loss. So social media use correlates with the thin idealization, self-objectification, focus on weight, body dissatisfaction. And maturing pre-adolescents, teenagers, their bodies are ever changing during this time. So when you combine vulnerable teens with all the other pressures they have going on, it's just the perfect storm for what we're worried about here. So when the research kind of pins down what's going on here, it's not just spending time on social media, but it's the way the sites are used. So it's the interaction with photos, the fixation on the photos. How do I look? How can I make myself look better? Social grooming behaviors. Increased exposure to the images lead to a distorted and kind of idealized conceptualization of how bodies are supposed to look. And some sites, you know, they may have good intent. Some of these sites are sites on healthy eating and good nutrition and better exercise. But how do the models on these sites look? They're usually thin, so-called in shape, and so this is what the teens are hit with all the time. So the social media fixation. Try out my pointer here. So we have poor self-esteem, right? You're looking at these pictures, well, I don't look like that. We have anxiety feeding in. And then we get the distorted body image, and the next kind of natural progression that we're seeing is disordered eating. So I do want to talk a little bit about what this means. And disordered eating, there are lots of studies out now and many ongoing looking at social media, how it relates to body image, how disordered eating is a progression with some of this. And in 2014, a study that's already completed, researchers from the University of Pittsburgh looked at social media usage and the risk of developing an eating disorder. They had almost 2,000 subjects, mainly older teens and young adults. Those spending the most time on social media sites were 2.2 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. Those who checked their social feed most often, so more obsession, 2.6 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. And I think, again, the reports of these studies always kind of lag behind what's really happening in real life. We're going to find more and more associations and, alarming statistics. The data in this study was acquired by the use of a questionnaire. So the other thing about social media is when you're going online and you're searching for stuff as a teenager and you're deciding what to follow and what to look at regularly, you're exposed to toxic communities. Pro-anorexia websites, many of you may have heard of pro-ana sites. These sites will often use the terms Anna and Mia, those names, to describe anorexia and bulimia. There's lots of swapping of thinspiration and fitspiration, kind of egging each other on, and comparing stats. And you hear alarming verbiage such as, "I love you to the bones." So, what is an eating disorder? A persistent disturbance of eating that impairs health or psychosocial functioning. And I don't want to go too much in depth because that would be another 2-hour talk, but I want to touch base just a little bit on each of the different types of eating disorders, and a little bit about how to recognize them. So these specific diagnoses are based on the American Psychiatric Association's and Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, otherwise known as the DSM-5. That's a big mouthful otherwise. And that will divide these eating disorders into distinct, separate categories. There are two more, pica and rumination disorder, but we're not going to talk about those here today for our purposes. There's 4 main ones. Try my pointer again. So anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, and avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or ARFID. And then everything else kind of fits into this category. Used to be known as eating disorder, NOS, and honestly, that's probably where most people lie. The others are very, restrictive categories. So anorexia nervosa, first of all, the type that most everybody grew up kind of hearing about. Although eating disorders in general are more common in women than in men, or girls than in boys, in all ages, anorexia is 10 to 20 to 1 as far as females versus males. But in the teenage years, it's actually pretty equal. So specific anorexia nervosa, which is extreme restriction on caloric intake, moderate malnutrition, moderate to severe, ideal body weight less than 85% for age, and body image distortion. So we do see boys with this. Number 2, bulimia. Bulimia is 3 times more common in females. Bulimia is categorized by binge eating in very short periods of time, large amounts of food, followed by purging or vomiting, and sometimes other behaviors to eliminate those calories, use of laxatives, excessive exercising. Binge eating disorder is also very problematic medically. Anorexia, we know that there are deaths from this sometimes. Bulimia is also very high risk for electrolyte disturbances from the vomiting, erosion of dental enamel that is permanent, and high risk for cardiac diseases and other sorts of major problems, even though their weight may not be super abnormal. Um, Binge eating disorder. So binge eating disorder is very common, and more common in males than females. The average age at onset is about 18, and 75% have actually another comorbid psychiatric disorder associated, whether it's anxiety, depression, OCD. It is difficult to treat. But it is treatable, and many of the eating disorder centers now have a large focus on binge eating disorder. They are very high risk for hypertension, obesity, diabetes, and all those comorbidities. Number 4 has been very much on our radar these days. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. What is that? So to simplify it, it's basically your extreme selective picky eater, but the professionals don't like us to use those terms. It is way more than being a picky eater, and it's probably as common as 5 to 15% in all eating disorder treatment centers now. It often starts in early childhood. 50% of kids with ARFID have generalized anxiety disorder, and 60% have another medical issue. So the tricky thing about this, the kids that will eat very selectively only certain foods due to texture issues or fear of something, or something they can't even explain. Many kids can't even explain what it truly is. 60% of them will have another medical issue that goes along, and it is beyond what is explainable by that medical issue. And what I mean by this is you could also have constipation or reflux or celiac disease or another sort of illness, but the abnormal disordered eating in this is way beyond what you'd expect from, say, a severely constipated kid or a kid with very bad reflux where they're in discomfort. It's above and beyond that. So, anyways, not to spend too much time on this, but I think that eating disorders are much easier to head off at the pass when you start to recognize signs of disordered eating before it becomes a full-blown disorder. And it helps for people to know a little bit about these so that you can recognize this in your patients or your students or your kids. And there are some tools that we use. So this one I really like. It's the ESP, the Eating Disorder Screen for Primary Care, and it's very simple and quick. You can do it in a few minutes. And 2 abnormal answers is a positive. So the abnormal answers are in parentheses there. Are you satisfied with your eating patterns? Do you ever eat in secret? Does your weight affect the way you feel about yourself? Do you have any members of your family suffering with an eating disorder? Do you currently suffer with, or have you ever suffered in the past with an eating disorder? And an abnormal answer to 2 of those does send a red flag and is highly predictive of the patient developing an eating disorder. This next one, the EAT test, eating attitudes test, you won't be able to read here, but you have in your handout. It is one of the most widely used self-reporting tools, and a positive score is 20 or higher. So eating disorders, if you are worried that you or someone that you know has one, speak with a trusted adult, a family member, a school nurse, teacher, guidance counselor, coaches. You know, the schools are really good at picking up red flags, and we depend on them because some of these kids we're seeing once a year for their checkup. they're not in for any other things. Many kids will notice that their friends are struggling, and so reaching out to a trusted adult is so important. And then see your primary care provider. Eating disorder management is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It is a team approach using the family, the primary care provider, the nutritionist, dietitian, the school, and mental health professionals, whether it be the therapist, both individual and group therapy, because oftentimes this is a family dynamic. Either there are family dynamics that have helped promote this, or more often it's just part of everything they're dealing with all at once, and everyone's affected by someone with an eating disorder. And then sometimes even the psychiatrist is necessary for medication management. Higher level of care when this team approach on an outpatient basis isn't promoting improvement in the right direction, or we're not moving quickly enough, then we look to a higher level of care, whether that be intensive outpatient treatment at an eating disorder program or residential care. And certainly if there is someone that is medically unstable, they will be hospitalized. So I wanted to spend most of the time on prevention because, you know, this is what we're all here about for our kids, right? If we can prevent some of this, whether it's obesity, eating disorders, self-esteem issues, and body image problems, anxiety, let's do what we can from the time when they're very young. And I know that we'll have some great talks coming up after this focusing on some of this. So to start with preschoolers and early elementary, model good health habits. Make those just part of your life. So starting from the very beginning, you know, eating healthy, 3 meals a day, sit down to eat. Eating is not just getting in calories, but it's a whole social catching up with everybody about their day time that your family can enjoy. Make exercise a priority. So the goal for each family member every day, 60 minutes. Doesn't have to be 60 minutes all at once. In fact, the research shows us it's better to do little bursts of energy all day long. 10-minute walk of the dog in the morning, running around at recess at school, afternoon playing outside with the whole family, make an obstacle course, do whatever. Parents, it counts for us too. You know, many of us with young kids, we don't have time to get to the gym either. So play out in the yard with your kids, that counts. Treat foods. So from a very early age, keep healthy foods in the house. Let the treat foods be treat foods that are at birthday parties, special outings out. You know, you can always get a soda when we go to the 99. Things like that where kids just learn, okay, I can look forward to that, but it's not something that I'm going to have all the time. Little to no screen time. So starting that very, very young will save us a lot of time later on, because I spend most of my day talking about limiting screen time. So many of you have probably seen the little 5210 mantra, 5 fruits and vegetables every day, 2 hours or less of screen time unrelated to school and homework, 1 hour of exercise for every person, kid or adult, and 0 sugary drinks except on occasion. Remember that, because that works well from 1-year-olds to 90-year-olds. Always use body respectful language. So what do I mean by that? So What are a couple of those words that we can just eliminate from our vocabulary with our children from very early on? Weight's a good one. Diet is another good one. You know, we eat for good health. We don't diet. I don't even like to use the word healthy diet. Healthy eating. Skinny and fat. So nobody has to raise their hands, but how many of us have said at one point in our lives, does this make me look fat? If we can all agree to never let our kids hear those words, then we're not going to perpetuate this other, you know, group, this other generation of focus on this. Tweens, so same 5210 mantra. Let's continue this all the way through. Limiting screen time significantly. I mean, does a third grader need a phone? No. And we don't have to get into a debate about when the right time is for a phone, but I mean, screen time should be really like last resort, special occasion. Kids don't need this stuff. I've had parents say they're worried that their kids won't be able to keep up when school comes around and they don't have a computer. Kids are so quick at this stuff, right? They are going to pick it up just fine. They don't need it early on. They don't need a phone. They don't need a tablet. They need to run around a lot. They need to play lots of imaginative games with their friends, with their parents. So if you start young and you continue it during the tween years, it's easier. Use the parental blocks and be aware of what's online. I think a whole talk could be dedicated to teaching parents what is out there and what do kids do with their Instagram and what types of sites can they very easily just stumble upon. So use the parental blocks. Stay Smart Online is a great website with info. Stay Smart Online. Ask the kids at this age, what do they think? Stuff comes up every day on a regular basis about, you know, little conversation starters where you can ask your kids, what do they think about this? What do they think about these pictures? Do they look real to them? What's the motivation behind someone putting something like this online? Ask them, and you will learn volumes and you'll teach more by having a dialogue rather than just saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Foster a hobby, a passion. And I think that the kids, we all know kids who are just much more about their sport, their music, their, you know, home baking business, whatever it is. You know, they don't have as much time to while away the hours scrolling through social feeds. And then, again, using body respectful language. Weight is a big thing at this age. I find that a lot of 6th to 8th graders are knowing what their weight is all of a sudden. It all of a sudden is a thing. Whereas when they were younger, they didn't really focus on that or hear that number. And they compare. And, you know, if you're comparing a 5'5" 6th grader with a 4'10" 6th grader, with a weight number means nothing. We all know that, but the kids don't know that. And I try, even in the office at checkups, to not talk about weight. I try to use the word growth. And then I show them the chart that shows height and weight, but again, just really promote the talk about your growth. Your growth is so good this year. Here's what we can talk about with your growth. All right. So practicing a passion, we talked about this. If you're like my sister's kids in Wyoming, you go bouldering. But kids with a passion, they're not immune, as Dr. Spillane pointed out. Even the athletes are vaping. But if you have a passion, then instead of telling kids about the, you know, type 2 diabetes and the hypertension and all of this that they're going to get if they, you know, are practicing unhealthy habits, or they're going to get cancer because they're vaping. Instead of telling them all of that stuff, if you remind kids that if they make bad decisions, they might not get to continue with their sport, or they might not be successful in this business they're trying to promote if they get sidetracked by health issues, addiction issues, etc. So practice a passion for sure. And then teenagers. You know, we've talked about a lot of this. Social media is not real life. Talk with your teens about this. Remind them of this all the time. Many people post only the stuff that looks good, not the stuff that looks bad. How many people post a selfie without doing anything to it, you know? Someone who's posting something that looks fun may not actually be having a lot of fun. I talk to so many parents of middle schoolers who are sad because their kids' friends are posting that they're out doing something really super awesome, but maybe that really isn't the case. They're just posting that. So have that dialogue. If it looks too good, it's likely to be fake. In the words of Elaine from Seinfeld, right? Everybody gets this. I'm a big Seinfeld fan. The kids won't get it. Teenagers, spend time with your teen. You know, parents that spend time with their teenagers, even though they drive you crazy. You're going to learn more about them. They learn more from you. Have family dinner or breakfast. Some people can't make family dinner work. Doesn't matter. Have breakfast. Have some time where you connect every day. Get to know their friends. Insist on knowing their friends. Don't back down when your friends tell you that none of their friends' parents do this. They do. They ask to know the friends. Encourage and enforce social media breaks. So I try with all my teenagers, especially the ones that are exhibiting some signs of poor self-esteem, disordered body image, maybe even disordered eating, and all of the things that can get wrapped up together. I encourage them to check out. And sometimes I'll say, how about 15 minutes? Put your social feed away for 15 minutes. Can you do it? And they kind of look at you with the face drains of color. And they look at you like, well, no, I can't. They can. And empower them. Let them know that they can, and they may feel better when they do that. As the parent, sometimes we need to jump in and take that social media away. You know, if things are not going well and you know it's this fixation on the phones and the Instagram and what other people are doing and how they look, take that phone away for a bit. If you can get them to do it on their own and it's their idea, it's always more effective. Get them to maybe collect a little bit of data, journal a bit after they've been able to work up to maybe half an hour of not being connected, and ask them to write a little bit about how do you feel. And many teens will report feeling more relaxed or it was nice, if you can get them to do it. Again, I talk this great talk in my office and I think, oh, I've got this person, and I'll ask them next time, did you try it? Well, no. So I keep plugging, you know. The research does show that the angst goes down a bit. So with teenagers, when you're talking about eating, again, we don't diet. We eat for good health. We don't eat to look a certain way or to be a certain weight. Encourage your kids to not follow certain things. You know, if that makes you feel that way every time you follow that person or look at that site, block it. Don't follow them. You know, and sometimes the kids are like, oh, I can do that. Yes, I can. It's empowering for them to know that they have that control. So tell your child, tell your student, you are unique and wonderful. There's no one else in the world exactly like you. And we keep drumming this in, and hopefully we can learn to navigate this social media world with all the pressures that there is out there and all the stuff that isn't real. And kids are going to survive. Thank you. So here are a few helpful websites. The other one, the National Eating Disorders Association, is also a very helpful website. Montanito.com is an eating disorder treatment facility. Healthychildren.org is just a fabulous website from the American Academy of Pediatrics for parents. Mirrormirror.org is a very good informative site. So I hope I left a little time for questions.